The guitar case was already backstage when Bruce Lee walked into the Whisky A Go-Go on a Tuesday night in August of 1967. It was leaning against a concrete wall in a room he hadn't seen yet, in a building he had never been to, on a street he had no reason to visit. The case was black, scuffed at the corners, a sticker on the lid that had been half peeled off and abandoned. Inside it, resting on red velvet that had faded to the color of dried blood, was a white guitar strung backwards for a left hand. Bruce Lee did not know about the guitar case. He did not know about the white guitar. He did not know that in approximately 2 hours he would be sitting 6 feet from the man who owned both of them, in a room the size of a closet, pressing his palm flat against a stranger's palm and feeling something he had never felt before. He was here because a friend had asked him to come. The friend trained at Bruce's school on Tuesdays and Thursdays and had been talking for 2 weeks about a musician performing tonight at the Whisky. Not about the music, about the hands. The friend kept saying the same thing over and over, like a man who had seen something he could not explain and had only one sentence available to describe it. He kept saying the hands are not human. He kept saying you have to see the hands. And Bruce, who did not go to clubs, who did not drink, who did not stay out past midnight unless a student needed him, said yes. Because the one subject that could get Bruce Lee to change his schedule was hands. He arrived at 10:15. The Sunset Strip was doing what it did every Tuesday night in the summer of '67, which was everything and nothing at the same time. Cars lined up along the curb with their windows down and music leaking out of every one of them in different keys. People standing on the sidewalk in clothes that belonged to a future that hadn't arrived yet. The air smelled like exhaust and perfume, and the specific chemical sweetness of a city that is inventing itself in real time. The Whisky A Go-Go sat on the strip like a mouth that was always open. The facade was plain, the sign was lit, the door was propped open, and through it came a sound that was not music yet, but the anticipation of music, amplifiers humming, drums being checked, the low murmur of a room full of people who had paid to hear something they hadn't heard before. Bruce walked in wearing a dark shirt and dark pants and shoes that made no sound on the sticky carpet. He moved through the crowd the way he moved through every room, which was to say, without displacing anything. People did not step aside for him. They simply did not notice he was there until he was already past them. He was 5'7" and 135 pounds, and in a room full of men wearing velvet and women wearing silver, he looked like a shadow that had decided to attend a party. His friend was at a small table near the back wall, 2 chairs, 1 drink on the table that belonged to the friend. Nothing in front of the empty chair, because Bruce did not drink. He sat down and he looked at the stage, and he waited. The opening act was a blues band, 4 men, guitar, bass, drums, harmonica. They were competent. They played 12-bar progressions with minor variations, and the guitarist had decent left-hand speed on the fretboard, and the drummer kept time without rushing, and the harmonica player bent notes in the right places. They were a band that had practiced enough to be reliable, and not enough to be memorable. But Bruce was not listening to the music. Bruce was watching the guitarist's left hand. He watched the way the fingers moved from chord to chord. The index finger leading, the ring finger following, the pinky arriving last and arriving late. He watched the transitions between chord shapes, and he saw the inefficiency. The guitarist was lifting his fingers too high off the fretboard between changes. A 1/4 inch too high, maybe less, but that 1/4 inch cost him time. It cost him 1/10 of a second per transition, over a 4-minute song with 80 chord changes. That was 8 seconds of wasted motion. 8 seconds of fingers traveling through air that served no purpose. Bruce did not think about this in musical terms. He thought about it in the terms he thought about everything. Economy of motion, the elimination of wasted movement, the distance between where a hand is and where it needs to be, and the speed at which it can close that distance without any gesture that does not serve the arrival. The opening act finished, polite applause, the stage cleared. Equipment was moved with the careful urgency of people who know that what comes next matters more than what just happened. The blues band's amplifier was unplugged and rolled aside. A different amplifier was brought out, larger, a different brand. It was positioned at a specific angle, and a cable was run from it to the front of the stage where a microphone stand had been placed, and then removed, and then placed again, 2 inches to the left. And then a guitar was placed on a stand at center stage. Bruce looked at it. It was white. It had curves that caught the stage light, the way a blade catches sunlight. It was strung backwards. The low strings were where the high strings should be. The tuning pegs pointed the wrong direction. Everything about the instrument was inverted, mirrored, built for a hand that the world was not built for. The house lights dimmed. The crowd shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Drinks were put down on tables with a collective precision that was almost synchronized, as if the room had received a signal that Bruce could not hear but everyone else could. A man walked onto the stage. He was tall, over 6 feet, lean in a way that was not thin but efficient. He wore something that was not quite a costume and not quite clothing, but occupied a territory between the two that only one human being in 1967 could occupy without looking ridiculous. His hair was large, not styled, not shaped, large. It surrounded his head like a declaration of independence from every barbershop that had ever existed. His eyes were dark and calm and amused. He moved toward the microphone the way a cat moves toward the edge of a roof, without hurry, without doubt, with the absolute certainty that whatever surface he stepped on would hold his weight. He picked up the white guitar. He held it left-handed. He adjusted the strap. He looked out at the room, and he smiled. Not at anyone, at the air, at the sound that was about to exist and did not exist yet. He played the first chord. The room changed. It did not get louder. It did not get darker. It changed. The molecular composition of the air inside the Whisky A Go-Go rearranged itself around a sound that had never existed in that room before. The chord was not a chord. It was a detonation that happened to be musical. It came out of the amplifier and hit the back wall and bounced off the ceiling and entered the chests of every person in the room simultaneously. And Bruce Lee felt it in his sternum, the way he felt it in his sternum, the way he felt it punch when he stood too close to a heavy bag and someone hit the other side. The second chord followed, then a run, then a bend, then a sound that was not a note and not a scream, but something that lived between the two. Bruce Lee forgot about economy of motion. Bruce Lee forgot about quarter-inch inefficiencies and wasted transitions and the biomechanical analysis he had been performing on the opening act for the last 40 minutes. He forgot about all of it because the man on stage was operating at a level of hand speed that made the previous analysis irrelevant. It was like spending an hour studying the way a house cat walks and then watching a leopard run. The left hand moved across the fretboard in patterns that Bruce's eyes could follow, but his brain could not predict. The fingers were not moving to positions, they were appearing at positions. The gap between intention and arrival had been removed. There was no travel, there was only departure and destination, and nothing in between. 16 frets covered in a motion so fast that the individual finger placements blurred into a single gesture, like a sentence spoken so quickly that the words merge into one sound, but the meaning still arrives intact. But it was the right hand that stopped Bruce Lee. The right hand held a pick, a small triangle of plastic between the thumb and index finger, and that pick was moving across the strings at a speed that Bruce Lee's trained eye, his specifically and deliberately trained eye, could not track. He could see the hand, he could see the wrist, he could see the forearm rotating, but the pick itself moved between the strings at a rate that existed below his visual threshold, below the threshold of a man who could see a jab coming from 4 feet away and move his head 1 inch to avoid it. The wrist rotation was what held him. The guitarist's right wrist was rotating in a motion that Bruce recognized, not from music, from Wing Chun. The rotation was identical to the wrist movement used in chain punching, the rapid-fire straight punches that travel from center to center along the shortest possible line, the same angular velocity, the same economy, the same principle of returning to neutral between each strike so that the next strike has a clean launch. This man had done to a guitar pick what Bruce Lee had done to his fists. He had trained the movement past its design specifications, past what the tendons were built to do, past what the nerve pathways were built to carry. He had pushed the speed of his right wrist into a territory that the human body was not supposed to reach, and he had done it so thoroughly and so permanently that the speed was no longer effort, it was architecture. It was built into the structure of his arm, the way load-bearing walls are built into the structure of a building. Bruce leaned forward in his chair, his forearms went to his knees. His eyes narrowed. The expression on his face was one that his students would have recognized immediately, and that anyone who had never trained with him would have mistaken for anger. It was not anger. It was the face Bruce Lee made when he encountered something that required him to update his understanding of what was physically possible. He watched for 40 minutes. 40 minutes of a man doing things to 6 strings that should not have been available to human fingers. 40 minutes of sound that was not played but extracted from the instrument, like a confession. 40 minutes of the fastest right hand Bruce Lee had ever seen, attached to the fastest left hand Bruce Lee had ever seen, and both of them operating simultaneously and independently in a display of bilateral coordination that made his own 2-hand trapping drills feel like arithmetic compared to calculus. The performance ended. The crowd erupted. The tall man put the white guitar back on its stand. He raised one hand to the room, not a wave, an acknowledgement. Then he walked off stage. Bruce Lee did not applaud. His hands stayed on his knees. Bruce Lee, he sat in the chair and he stared at the empty stage where the man had been, and he processed what he had just seen. He was not processing the music. He was processing the speed. He was filing it inside the part of his brain that catalogued the fastest things he had ever witnessed, and the tall man on stage had just moved into first place in a category that Bruce Lee had previously occupied alone. He turned to his friend. His friend was watching him with the expression of a man who has recommended a restaurant and watched his companion take the first bite and is waiting for the verdict. Bruce said one sentence: "I need to meet him." The friend knew someone. The someone knew someone else. 15 minutes of whispered conversations at the bar, and a nod from a man in a leather jacket standing by the backstage hallway, and Bruce Lee was walking down a narrow corridor with concrete walls, and band posters taped to them with yellowing Scotch tape. The carpet was different back here, not sticky, worn by the feet of musicians walking from the stage to the small rooms behind it, where the adrenaline faded and the sweat cooled, and the real versions of the performers emerged from underneath the stage versions. The backstage room was small, 10 feet by 12 feet, a mirror on one wall with a row of bulbs above it. 3 of the 5 bulbs were burnt out. The 2 surviving bulbs cast a light that was yellow and tired and barely strong enough to reach the opposite wall. 2 metal folding chairs, a table with bottles of water and a bottle of bourbon that had been opened and barely touched, an ashtray with 3 cigarettes crushed into it at different angles, and on the floor the guitar case, open, the white guitar resting in the faded red velvet, the strings still vibrating at a frequency too low to hear, but high enough to feel, if you placed your hand close enough. The tall man was sitting in one of the folding chairs. He was drinking water, not the bourbon, water. He was still wearing the stage clothes, but he had unbuttoned the top, and his chest was visible, and there was sweat on his collarbones, and his breathing was slightly elevated, and his hands were resting on his knees, with the fingers spread and the tendons visible, and the calluses catching the yellow light from the surviving bulbs. Bruce walked in. He stopped 3 feet inside the door. 2 men looked at each other. The narrator pauses here, lets the silence sit, because what happened in this room cannot be understood without first understanding what it meant for these 2 men to be in the same space. One had trained his hands to destroy, the other had trained his hands to create. One expressed speed through contact, the other expressed speed through sound. They had arrived at the same place from opposite directions, the summit of human hand speed, and they were standing on it together and looking at each other with the recognition that only exists between people who have paid the same price for the same thing and have never met anyone else who has. The tall man spoke first. His voice was not what the stage suggested. It was soft, gentle, almost shy. He had the accent of a man who had lived in several countries and kept pieces of all of them in his vowels. He said he had seen Bruce in the audience. He said he had noticed from the stage that Bruce was not listening to the music. He said he could tell, even from 30 feet away under stage lights, that Bruce was watching his hands, and he wanted to know why. Bruce did not perform modesty. He did not say something polite. He said what was true. Your right hand is the fastest I have seen on any human being who does not fight for a living. The tall man looked at him. The smile that appeared on his face was not the stage smile. It was smaller and realer, and it reached his eyes in a way that the stage smile never needed to. He had been complimented 10,000 times by journalists, by fans, by other musicians, by women, by men who wanted something from him. 10,000 compliments, and he had felt nothing from any of them, because none of them were about the thing that mattered. The speed, the pure mechanical fact of what his hands could do, the engineering. And the man standing 3 feet from him had walked in and said the one thing that mattered in the one way that mattered, and had done it in under 15 seconds. The tall man asked what Bruce did. Bruce told him, The tall man's smile widened. He said he had seen martial arts before, on television, in demonstrations, in the movies. He said it always looked like dancing with anger. He said he had never seen it described as a hand-speed discipline. He said he had never met anyone who looked at fighting the way he looked at playing. Then he looked at Bruce's hands, the way Bruce had looked at his from the audience, with the same analytical intensity, the same recognition. He looked at the knuckles and the tendons and the forearms and the wrists, and he saw in them the same thing Bruce had seen in his fingertips from 30 feet away. A machine built for speed by a man who refused to accept the limits of the original design. The tall man said something that changed the temperature of the room. "I bet my hands are faster than yours." He did not say it as a challenge. He did not say it with aggression or arrogance or the competitive snarl that men use when they want to establish dominance. He said it with curiosity, pure curiosity. The curiosity of a man who has been the fastest person in every room he has ever entered and has just met someone who might be the same thing and genuinely wants to know which of them is faster. Not to win, to know. Bruce looked at him. His expression did not change. His hands did not move. His weight did not shift. He stood exactly where he had been standing since he walked in, and he looked at the tall man in the folding chair, and he said 2 words. "Faster at what?" The tall man reached down. He picked up the white guitar from the open case. He held it across his lap, not in playing position, across his lap like a child holding a toy. "It is about to show a friend. Let me show you." The tall man placed the guitar in playing position, not standing, sitting, the neck angled upward, his left hand wrapped around the fretboard at the 12th fret. His right hand held the pick between his thumb and index finger, the way Bruce Lee held a dart. Lightly, with the understanding that grip is not about pressure, grip is about precision. The tighter you hold something, the slower it moves. Both of them knew this. They had learnt it in different rooms for different reasons, and arrived at the same truth. He played a run, 16 notes, 16 individual frets. His left hand travelled from the 12th fret to the 3rd and back in a single motion. Each note was distinct, not slurred, not slid, picked. His right hand struck each string independently at a rate that produced 16 clean sounds in under 2 seconds. When he finished, the last note hung in the air for a moment, and then the room was silent again. He looked at Bruce. He did not say "your turn." He did not need to. The look said it. Bruce stood up from the folding chair. He took one step into the center of the room. He set his feet, and he threw a combination. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut, back fist. 5 strikes into a space of air, no larger than a dinner plate. His fists left their starting position and returned to their starting position, and everything that happened between departure and return took less than 2 seconds. The air in the room moved. The tall man felt it on his face from 6 feet away. A displacement of atmosphere caused by 5 impacts against nothing that hit harder than nothing should be able to hit. The tall man watched. His eyebrows rose 1/2 an inch. He looked at Bruce's hands, then at his own, then back at Bruce's. "Same speed," he said, "different instrument." Bruce sat back down. The tall man went again. This time he placed his pick against a single string, the high E, and he tremolo picked. The pick struck the string in a rapid alternating motion. Down, up, down, up, down, up. 16 strikes per second. The string vibrated so fast it became invisible. The sound was not a note. It was a texture, a blur of frequency that existed somewhere between music and machinery. Bruce watched the pick. He counted. His lips moved slightly as he tracked each individual strike. When the tall man stopped, Bruce said a number, 16. The tall man nodded. On a good night, 18. Bruce extended his right hand into the air in front of him. He made a fist, and he threw straight punches from center. Chain punches, the Wing Chun technique. Short, rapid, straight punches that travel 6 inches and return 6 inches, and repeat. He threw them for 3 seconds. He stopped. "I can strike 14 times per second," he said. "You have me by 2. The tall man looked at him. He said something that Bruce would think about for years afterward. "But my strikes weigh nothing. Yours break bones." Bruce said nothing for 4 seconds. Then he nodded. It was the nod of a man who has just been handed a piece of truth he did not expect from a place he did not expect it. The tall man leaned forward in his chair. He put the guitar aside. He placed his right hand flat on the table, palm down, fingers spread. The calluses on his fingertips were visible under the yellow light. Each fingertip was a different texture from the skin around it. Harder, smoother, built by years of pressing steel strings into a wooden fretboard until the skin died and was replaced by something that was not quite skin anymore. He said, "I want to try something. Put your hand on the table like mine. I am going to lift each finger one at a time, pinky to thumb, as fast as I can. Then you do the same. Whoever is faster wins." This was not about punching. This was not about playing. This was about finger independence, the ability to isolate a single digit and move it without moving the others, a skill that both of them had trained for different reasons through different methods and arrived at from different directions. Guitarists need it to fret individual notes without lifting adjacent fingers. Martial artists need it to trap and redirect with individual fingers while the rest of the hand maintains structure. Bruce placed his hand on the table, palm down, fingers spread. The two hands were side by side, one with calloused fingertips and long tapered fingers, built for reaching across 6 strings, the other with flat knuckles and visible tendons, and a thumb that was disproportionately strong for its size. The tall man went first. Pinky, ring, middle, index, thumb, 5 fingers lifting and dropping in sequence. The motion was so fast it looked like a wave passing through water. Each finger moved independently, no sympathetic movement from the adjacent digits. Pure isolation at a speed that made the individual lifts blur into a single ripple. Bruce went, same sequence, pinky to thumb, 5 fingers, same speed. The friend standing in the doorway watching could not tell the difference. The two hands performed the identical motion at the identical rate, and if someone had filmed them from above and removed the arms and the context, they would have appeared to be the same hand. They did it again, faster, and again, faster still. The table vibrated under their fingertips. The bottles on the surface trembled. The bourbon shifted in its bottle. On the 5th attempt, something happened that the friend in the doorway would describe for the rest of his life as the strangest thing he had ever witnessed. Their hands synchronized, not on purpose, not coordinated, not counted in. Both men began the sequence at the same instant, and their fingers moved in perfect unison. Identical speed, identical rhythm, identical amplitude, pinky lifting at the same millisecond, ring finger following at the same interval, middle, index, thumb, 2 hands moving as one hand, 2 nervous systems firing at the same rate. 2 men who had spent their entire lives pushing the speed of their fingers past the limit of what human tissue was designed to do, and the proof was on the table. They had arrived at exactly the same place, the ceiling, the absolute ceiling of human finger speed, and they were both pressed against it. They stopped at the same time. They looked at their own hands, then at each other's. The tall man said, "Nobody has ever been the same speed as me." Bruce said, "Nobody has ever been the same speed as me either." The room was quiet for a long time. The 2 surviving light bulbs buzzed. The guitar in the open case on the floor hummed at a frequency that only existed because the table was vibrating, and the vibration had traveled through the floor and into the case, and into the strings, and the strings were responding to the energy that 2 pairs of hands had just put into the room. The tall man picked up the guitar again, but he did not play. He held it, and he looked at Bruce, and he said something that shifted the conversation from speed into something deeper. He said, "I practice 12 hours a day. Some days more. I play until my fingers bleed, and then I play through the blood until the calluses come back harder. I have done this since I was 15. I cannot stop. If I stop for 1 day, my hands feel wrong. If I stop for 2 days, they feel like they belong to someone else. My hands are the only part of me I trust completely. The rest of me is unreliable. My hands never lie." Bruce listened. His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted. He recognized what the tall man was describing, because he lived inside the same condition. "I train 14 hours, Bruce said. "I punch a makiwara board until my knuckles split, and then I punch through the split until the bone hardens underneath. I have done this since I was 13. My hands are not the part of me I trust. My hands are the part of me that delivers what my mind decides. If I lost my hands, I would still be dangerous, because my hands are not my weapon. My mind is my weapon. My hands are the envelope. My mind is the letter." The tall man went still. He looked at the guitar in his lap. He looked at his own fingers wrapped around the neck of the instrument, and his face changed. Not dramatically, subtly, the way a face changes when a thought arrives that reorganizes everything behind it. He said, "I have never thought about it that way. I have spent my entire life training my hands and never once asked what they serve. They play because they play. The speed exists because I built it. But I never asked what the speed is for. It just is." Bruce said, "Speed without purpose is noise." The tall man looked up. He was not offended. He was altered. Something had moved inside him, and it was visible in his eyes the way a stone is visible at the bottom of clear water. They sat in silence for almost a minute. Then the tall man did something that surprised Bruce. He placed his left hand flat on his knee, and he extended and contracted each finger slowly, deliberately, one at a time, studying his own hand as if seeing it for the first time. Then he showed Bruce something, a finger exercise he had invented, a specific sequence designed to build independence between the ring finger and the pinky, the two weakest fingers on any hand, the two fingers that share a tendon sheath and resist separation. He demonstrated it slowly, then fast. The ring finger and pinky moved in opposite directions at a speed that should not have been possible given their anatomical constraints. Bruce watched, replicated it, immediately, on the first attempt. He adapted the motion, widened the angle, said he would use it for trapping speed in close-range chain sequences, where the ring finger and pinky need to control a wrist independently of the index and middle fingers. The tall man watched Bruce adapt his exercise, and his expression was the expression of a man who has just given someone a sentence in English and heard it spoken back in a language he does not know, but somehow understands. Bruce showed him something in return, a wrist rotation drill from Jeet Kune Do, a small movement, almost invisible, designed to redirect incoming force using the minimum possible rotation of the forearm. The drill was about efficiency, about finding the shortest rotational path between neutral and redirect and back to neutral. The tall man tried it without the guitar first. Then he picked up the instrument. He applied the rotation to his right hand, to the picking motion, and he played a passage, a specific passage, a run he had been trying to play cleanly for 6 months, a sequence that required a wrist angle his right hand could not achieve without tension. With the rotation Bruce had shown him, the tension vanished. The angle appeared, the passage came out clean, every note separated, every pick stroke landing exactly where it needed to land. He stopped playing. He stared at Bruce. "You just fixed something with my playing that no guitar teacher has ever fixed." Bruce said, "I did not fix your playing, I fixed your wrist. The playing fixed itself." The tall man laughed, a real laugh, short and genuine and surprised. The laugh of a man who has just been handed the answer to a question he had been asking the wrong people. It was past 1 in the morning. The sounds of the club closing leaked through the concrete walls, chairs being stacked on tables, glasses clinking into bus tubs, a mop being pushed across a floor. The Whisky a Go-Go was becoming an empty room again, the way all rooms become empty when the thing that filled them is over. The tall man stood up. He placed the white guitar in its case. He closed the latches, one and then the other. The sound they made was quiet and final. Bruce stood up. They faced each other. The tall man did not extend his hand for a handshake. Bruce did not bow. What happened instead was something that neither of them planned, and both of them understood. The tall man raised his right hand, palm out, fingers spread. Bruce raised his. They pressed their palms together, flat, fingertip to fingertip. The tall man's fingers were longer. Bruce's were wider. The calluses met the knuckles. The guitar skin met the fighting skin. They held the position for 3 seconds. It was not a handshake. It was not a greeting. It was a recognition. A seal pressed between two men who had done the same impossible thing to their bodies through different instruments, and recognized in each other the cost of it, and the reward of it, and the specific loneliness of it that exists only for people who have pushed past what they were built to do and live on the other side of that line where no one else can follow. The tall man picked up his guitar case. He walked out through a back door that opened into an alley. The night air came in for a moment, warm and smelling like the city. Bruce walked out through the hallway toward the club floor. They moved in opposite directions, through opposite doors, into opposite futures. They never saw each other again. The tall man went on to become the most influential musician of the 20th century. He played at a festival 2 years later that defined a generation. He died 3 months after that festival. He was 27 years old. His hands stopped because his heart stopped, and the world lost a pair of fingers it would never replace. Bruce Lee went on to become the most influential martial artist in human history. He made 4 films that changed how the world understood the human body. He died 6 years after that night at the Whisky. He was 32 years old. His hands stopped because his brain stopped, and the world lost a pair of fists it would never replace. Between them, they lived 59 years. In those 59 years, they redefined what the human hand could do. One through sound, one through force, both through speed, both through an obsession so total that it consumed the body it lived inside and left the world with nothing but the memory of what those hands could do when they were alive. The friend who stood in the doorway that night was asked about the meeting once. In 1985, at a dinner party in Los Angeles, someone mentioned Bruce Lee, and someone else mentioned the tall man and the friend, went quiet and then told the story. When he finished, the table was silent. Someone asked if he had any proof it happened. He said he had one thing, a notebook he kept in 1967, a small notebook with a leather cover that he used to write down things he did not want to forget. He opened it to a page near the middle and showed them a single line written in blue ink that had faded to grey. The line read, "BL met JH backstage at Whisky. Hands, same speed. Neither won." He closed the notebook. He did not explain the initials. Nobody at the table asked him to. They pressed their palms together in a room with 2 burnt-out bulbs and a white guitar and the smell of sweat and bourbon that nobody drank. 2 men who had trained their hands past the boundaries of what the species was designed to do. 2 men who found each other on the same Tuesday night in a city that was inventing itself and recognized in each other the one thing that mastery cannot give you, company, because mastery is lonely. It is the loneliest thing a person can build, and finding someone who has built the same thing through a different door, who understands the cost without needing it explained, who can press their palm against yours and feel the same calluses for different reasons. That is the only thing that makes the loneliness bearable. Even if it only lasts one night, even if it only lasts 3 seconds of palms pressed together in a room the size of a closet on a Tuesday in August in 1967, even then,